I mean, a lot of people have alluded to the measure of a good city is a city full of children, and in my presentation, I will demonstrate that increasingly in cities throughout the world, children are disappearing from our urban environment. So I will share with you some of the work we have been doing over the last 20 years in looking at the link between child play, health, and the built environment. So I always start with this inquiry. This is one of the biggest inquiries, as far as I know. It's called the Good Child Inquiry, which was conducted by the Children's Society a few years ago. But it's a huge sample, thousands of children throughout the world, throughout the UK, sorry. And they asked children, what is your definition of a good life? And two main things came. The first thing is friendship. Socializing is it's a very powerful measure of a good life for children. The second important thing is play. Play is a catalyst, is a powerful catalyst for children to socialize and to exercise and so on and so forth. What also came up very powerfully from this inquiry is that the change is not good. I mean, we heard from young Gail yesterday about his emphasis on children environment and how important, obviously, older people and younger people in the urban environment. And unfortunately, what this study revealed that when they asked children to name their best friend, the trend is decreasing. So there are less opportunities for them to socialize. So what has changed in the last, I would say, probably 60, 70 years? Nearly 1 in 5 children play outside for less than an hour a week. That's what various studies have revealed, including weekends. And yet, there is a very strong link between the amount children spend playing outside and the time spent in sedentary activities, playing computer games, watching TV, and so on and so forth. Overall, the trend has been that children, as probably a lot of adults, are leading increasingly sedentary lifestyles. The number of children, I think we heard this very often, walking to school has decreased increasingly over the years. A study has been conducted in the last few years, and they found that half parents driving their kids to school live under half mile from the school, and the trend is increasing. So as you know, these few stats are increasingly showing how children's world, as we know it, is increasingly changing. I mean, how did we get from that to here? Is unbelievable. I mean, let's say in what they call the boomer generation in the 50s, where car ownership has increased. So in the 60s, there were 1.5 million cars in London, and 19 million cars in the UK. And at that time, streets used to be, I mean, you could go to a lot of pictures and books and so on of that time, and you'll find that, the streets are filled with older people, with children, having fun. And we got here. So the car, in my mind, has the biggest impact on child play. Loss of connection between the home and the streets. The street has probably the biggest impact in providing a supportive environment for child play. Children have vanished from our streets. We have now over 34 million, and this is in 2012, over 34 million cars in the UK. Okay, we have heard a lot about playgrounds. And in the last probably decades, we seem to be obsessed with this idea that if a child play, there is a dedicated place for them called the playground. And we have been kind of obsessed with this concept of ghettoized, what I call ghettoized play. And we have been creating what some people qualified as a KFC approach. Does anybody know what KFC stands for? Yeah? Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's absolutely, no. It stands for Kid, Fence, and Carpet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So basically what it is, it's a simple formula. Create a fence, put a carpet, and put one or two swings and maybe, other things, and it will solve child play. And we did a lot of work at the University of West of England, and we found that these type of environments are becoming uninspiring for children. They find them boring, not challenging. And sometimes they go and engage in play in a more dangerous, potentially more dangerous or risky situation. I picked this quote from a seminal book, when in the 70s by Colin Ward, and he says one should be able to play everywhere easily, loosely, and not forced into a playground or a park. The failure of an urban environment can be measured. It's strong argument. Can be measured in direct proportion to the number of playgrounds. So the more playgrounds you have, the more failure is. We did a lot of work with local authorities, in particular in our case with Bristol City Council. And this trend probably started in the US, and it has contaminated other countries. The fear of litigation. There were some cases in the UK where a child, just jumped from a swing or something, injured themselves, and the next day the parents sue the local authority. Your playground is not safe. Your swing, there were not enough. The wood was not strong in this place. In fact, it was very interesting. Following our advice, the local authority in Bristol tried to introduce a bit of fun, in playgrounds, having more challenging swings and so on. And they got a lot of complaints from parents, your playground has become unsafe, So this is the kind of, and what has, as a result of that, the local authorities had to invest a great deal of money to make playgrounds safer. And as a result of that, the cost of playground has more than doubled. In fact, a lot of local authorities were trying to get rid of managing playgrounds. They were kind of encouraging local communities and so on to take over because they didn't want to handle them. And increasingly, people are challenging that bland design of play environments is restricting children's creativity. Okay, what are we doing? We are increasingly putting our eggs in one basket. To most people, if you say, what is the best way to exercise? They will say, go to the gym. What I call the fitness culture. Okay? Fitness culture, there is evidence that over 80% of people tend to drive there. Predominantly 18 to 45, mostly professional users. And we spent over 400 million for 100 million visits. You know, I picked these statistics from Green Space, Better Places. While the recreational culture, which is like provides the best opportunities for incidental physical activity, what I call fun physical activity, which is walking, cycling, and so on, we are in comparison, spending peanuts, you know, very, very little funding. And yet, over 70% of people tend to walk to this kind of recreational culture opportunities. It affects all ages, not a particular group. It's and all for all social groups, we are dedicating 600 million for 2.5 billion visits. So there is obviously a prevalence of the recreational culture. This is a recent article in the Independent. Parents, you know, and this is probably parents are the biggest obstacles to child play. And I remember I was very proud of a slide I have done a few years ago, and I spent a lot of time collecting statistics, you know, to show that on average, despite the news about abduction from time to time, despite accidents and so on, overall, the outdoor environment is becoming safer now than it used to be a few years ago. And I did it I thought, you know, instead of doing it to the converted, I do it to people who are, you know, who usually don't tend to come to these kind of events, parents. And I remember in the question answer session, one parent raised her hand, you know, and she says, I heard what you said, but if there is 1% risk, I'm not prepared to take it, you know. I said to her, I had a good answer for her, you know. I said, the fact you came here, you have probably taken 100 risks, you know. You got in the car, maybe you got in the bus, you crossed the road, and so on. That's part of everyday life, you know. And increasingly, parents are trying to minimize children exposure to danger, and they are increasingly, you know, teaching children to believe what we call in a guarded environment. And there is, I mean, this study by Bernardo and so on, they are saying that this type of attitude is having detrimental effect on children. They are losing social skills. There has been a study to show that, you know, a 10-year-old does not know how to cross the road by themselves. They have been taken everywhere. You know, they don't know how to navigate in familiar environments. They don't know how to navigate cities anymore. And also, there is a very strong link between parents' attitudes and the level of physical activity. Parents that tend to be very protective of their children tend to be less active. Now, some people say, I mean, this is a book which was, you know, made a lot of noise about children outdoor play, and the conclusion that the author came to, it's pointless, simply providing more child-friendly or safe play while parents are so preoccupied with children's safety. Nowhere is regarded as secure except the home, and no activity, so we should give up. And what I will share with you next is a study we have done in the last 20 years, predominantly in Bristol, to show that the supportive, carefully, you know, supportive built environment can and significantly affect children's outdoor play. So this is some of the work which was reported by the BBC and so on. And we, at the time when children's obesity was increasing, a lot of people were kind of obsessed with food. You know, if you in this country, Jamie Oliver's work, if you remember, you know, he publicized the issue of food. But you know, I told them that the biggest contributor to counteracting obesity was the built environment, and it was, I think, probably one of the few studies which put the built environment in the public domain in terms of link between the built environment and obesity, which is, I mean, in my mind, it doesn't have to be done through gyms and so on. It's in the natural environment, which is outdoor play. So there is, our research and other studies have shown that to address the decreasing level of physical fitness or physical activity is to spend longer periods of time. So children who spend longer periods of time outdoors tend to be fitter, tend to be more physically active. And the more time spent outdoors, the higher level of physical activity. And play is the most powerful catalyst for being fit and being physically active. So I share with you in the next 10 minutes or quarter of an hour, if Suzanne allows me, this study we have done. In my mind, it's one of the unique studies, you know, which try to provide objective evidence about the link between children's play and the impact on physical activity, on their health, on their social interaction, on their well-being in general. So this particular study was conducted in Southmead, which is a suburb on the outskirts of Bristol. We involved 63 children, followed for a whole week. And this is one of the, I mean, now a lot of people are using this kind of tool, but this is in the early 2000s. This is, in my mind, one of the few studies, what we did at that particular time is we combined GPS devices with accelerometers. So GPS devices provided us data on the location, you know, where children played, and it provides us information about duration of play. The accelerometers provided information about the level of physical activity. So we conducted that, as I said, in addition to that, we have used other means of asking parents about their children's play. And so what we did, which was, I thought, worked quite well, we put all these devices in fabricated belt, you know, so that children forget about it, you know. So they wear the belt, and they go and play and roam for the whole day. So this is in terms of typology of places, Southmead had a good, for us, that's why we selected it very carefully. It had a mixture of what we call informal play spaces. It had streets, parks, and so on and so forth. It had it has an adventure playground. And it has obviously people's houses and gardens, which we call it. So the formal play spaces is the playground, which is the adventure playground and the other playground, and the private places are the people's homes. So this is the Southmead Adventure Playground. So we wanted to know, where does really play take place? You know, a lot of people talk about play. We wanted to know objectively, how long does it take? Where does it exactly take place? So we also measured the traffic in terms of number of vehicles through various streets and so on. And we put all this data in the GIS pack. So if you look at the dots here, it's all associated with children play. You know, so these are all reflective of where children played. And obviously, we had also the time dimension, the duration. I mean, I'm very proud of this slide. I mean, this is something we did with a school in Southmead. And we asked children to pick, I mean, this is cognitive mapping, which is a very well-used technique. But we asked children to put dots in the places they like, the places in blue, which are the places they like, in yellow, the places they didn't. And we did it from case stage 1 in the UK, it's to case stage 2, so it's like from 5 to 11. And it's very interesting when we show the results to the head teacher. And if you look at the red dots, these are where the car park is, you know, and there is a place where, because it's a very very tight space. I mean, mostly staff, they have to reverse in that, for instance, this particular space in here. So as a result of it, when the head teacher looked at this, he says, I need to do something about it, you know. And he has completely removed the cars and the parking from that spot and put it somewhere else. So which in a way improved children play. So we have also looked at on-site supervision. Suzanne talked about Jane Jacobs' work. And the way we did it, we measured the number of overlooking windows of in relation to child play. So 100 meters, how many windows overlooking the space? And we put that in the GIS database. So what did this study reveal? Okay, very interesting. So if you look less than 30 minutes play per day, the playground, the formal space, tend to perform better. And that explains it. Because what we did, in addition to that, some observation work. When we observed mothers or parents bring their kids to the playground, after quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, they start to be fidgety, you know, so they start looking at their, and I think we need to go, you know. So that explains it, that they are, you know, because to be honest, it's boring for a parent, you know. I mean, obviously the child is getting, you know, their amount of play, but for a parent, you know, just standing there is, sometimes they haven't got a seat and so on and so forth. So for less than 30 minutes, the playground outperformed the street and the informal spaces. But look what happened after 30 minutes, you know. There is no competition there. So the informal space, like the park and the street in particular, provide a better setting for longer period of time for children's play. Now, you remember we gave them accelerometers as well. So we have taken their BMI and so on, which is body mass index. And we measured. Again, a similar trend, you know, children, in this particular case, the intensity, the informal spaces, so children who play in informal spaces, the time they play in informal spaces, tend to be more physically active. So there is no doubt about it. What about social interaction? And the social interaction, the way we, this is the data we got from parents. We asked them, how many friends do your children play with? So there's none, one or more, and several. So, I mean, in general, I mean, again, this data is showing that the street and the informal spaces provide the most suitable and the most, I would say, catalyst for what we call incidental social interaction. That's the best opportunity for them to meet other children. Either they know them or they don't know them, you know, to interact with them and play, because, you know, play is a social activity, is a social event. Frequency of play, I mean, this is very, very important. It's not good. It's like somebody going to the gym once a week. You know, the international recommendation, they are saying you need to do a bit every day. It's not good enough to go, you know, once a week or maybe even sometimes twice. You don't meet the requirements in terms of level of physical activity. So the frequency of play is very, very important. And the more frequent they play, the more they are socially active and probably even socially active. So, I mean, we found that playgrounds tend to be the setting for children play mainly during weekends, because that's when parents are free, you know, to take their kids to the, so it does not provide enough opportunity for social interaction, for outdoor play, while streets and so on, children tend to play in these kind of settings more often, you know, which obviously provide a better opportunity. I mean, almost probably good for the parents as well. It gives them the time to do other things, you know, and it's good for the kids, you know. They are playing and interacting without being, you know, without adult supervision or interference. So what we found that at the formal settings, the playground attracted most of the active play during weekends and school holidays, while informal settings, including streets and park, attracted most of the observed frequent play activities. Natural surveillance, very, very important, you know, and this is tallies with a recent study which asked parents, where do you want? I mean, there is a very important, very strong link between parents, accompanied parents or observed parents, and the amount of play. When parents interfere with play, play tend to be very, very small in terms of duration and frequency. So the play spaces that allowed natural surveillance, so it means parents can see them from the living room or from the kitchen and so on, tend to be the places where play takes place more frequently, because parents are more relaxed about, you know, letting their kids engage in physical activity and play. And it also tend to be correlated with higher duration of outdoor play. So what's, in terms of conclusion, you know, Susan will be very pleased about that, but play, sorry, I have to go back. So the street, I think, is the most powerful catalyst to encourage outdoor play. You know, we have to find a way to make our streets safer and more attractive for children, to entice them back to come to the streets, to come to the outdoors. And I think they offer the best opportunities for outdoor play, for physical activity, for social interaction. It's also, it's more accessible and secure. So there was a study conducted recently, and thousands of parents asked, how can you let your child play more often? They said, if we can watch them, you know, if we know where they are, you know, if they are close to and the street is the best setting for that. And so it offers the best opportunity for social interaction opportunities. And again, it's the study we have done and which tallies with other research. It provides incidental physical activity opportunities. So if you look at, we looked at the local authority funding. I mean, in the UK, I'm not sure about other countries. We are putting almost 80% of funding in playgrounds, you know, and yet other settings are receiving no attention whatsoever. So my conclusion is that we have to find, as planners, designers, and decision makers, we have to find a way to make streets fun for all again. Thank you.